One signal. 72 seconds. Never repeated. On August 15, 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio caught a burst from deep space 30 times louder than the background noise of the universe, and it still has no confirmed explanation. And that's not even the strangest part.
The telescope was called Big Ear. 200 feet across, built from aluminum sheeting and wire mesh, sitting in a field near Delaware, Ohio, doing the same job every single night, listening to the sky one narrow slice at a time.
No one was even watching that night.
The receiver ran on its own, scratching numbers onto a rolling sheet of paper, the way a seismograph draws a flat line until the ground decides otherwise. 3 days later, an astronomer named Jerry Emmons sat down with a cup of coffee to review the printout, page by page, expecting nothing. Most nights, the numbers on that paper never climbed past 1 or 2. Background static. The cosmic equivalent of a hiss. Then his eyes stopped on one line. The sequence read 6, E, Q, U, J, 5, a code the system used instead of 2-digit numbers, because the scale only went up to 35. It had never needed more than 9. Think of it like a stadium during a game. 30,000 people talking at once, a wall of noise you tune out without thinking. Now imagine one whisper, from the far side of that stadium, arriving louder than the person screaming next to you.
That's roughly what Big Ear recorded. A signal 30 times stronger than the background hum of the universe itself. He grabbed a red pen.
Wait. Look at this line again.
That's not noise. Noise doesn't climb like a staircase and fall back down in exactly the shape it should.
Then what is it?
I don't know. But it came from out there. Not from us.
In the margin, next to that string of characters, Emmons wrote a single word. Wow. That word gave the signal its name, and the name is the only part of this story everyone agrees on. What produced it is a different matter entirely. So what was sitting out there, in that one patch of sky, near the constellation Sagittarius, broadcasting for exactly 72 seconds and then going silent? But 3 days later, when scientists pointed their telescopes back at that exact spot, nothing. The signal was gone, as if it had never existed at all. And that's where the real questions start, the ones official science still won't answer straight.
For nearly 40 years, nobody had an answer. Then, in 2016, an amateur astronomer named Antonio Paris offered one, and it made headlines everywhere. 2 comets, he said. Comets nobody had catalogued yet in 1977. His idea was elegant. Comets aren't just ice and rock, they drag a cloud of hydrogen gas behind them, sometimes millions of miles wide. Think of steam rising off a hot cup of tea. You can't see the water evaporating, but under the right light, that faint cloud becomes visible, drifting, expanding. A comet does the same thing with hydrogen as sunlight warms its surface. And hydrogen gas, drifting through space, can emit radio waves at exactly one frequency. 1420 MHz. The same frequency Big Ear recorded that night. Paris named 2 suspects. Comet 266P/Christensen. Comet P/2008 Y2/Gibbs. Both, he calculated, would have drifted through that patch of sky in August 1977. Case closed. Mystery solved. That was the headline. Except one detail broke the whole theory before it even left the lab.
Check the discovery dates.
266P was found in 2006. The other one in 2008. 30 years after the signal.
So in August 1977, those comets weren't just unobserved. They weren't in any catalog. As far as astronomy was concerned, they didn't officially exist yet. You can't credit an object for a signal decades before anyone on Earth knew it was there. When other astronomers ran the math independently, using the comet's actual orbits, the numbers didn't line up either.
the comets would have been in the wrong position, and their hydrogen clouds far too faint to produce a signal 30 times louder than background noise. By 2017, the comet theory was effectively retired. Quietly. No new headlines this time.
So the tedious explanation collapsed under its own timeline. And that leaves something far less comfortable, because if it wasn't a comet, then whatever made that noise came from a direction nobody wanted to look at too closely.
Here's a question almost nobody asks. Why 1420 MHz? Out of the entire radio spectrum, why did the loudest unexplained signal in the history of radio astronomy land exactly there?
1420 MHz is not a random channel. It's the frequency at which neutral hydrogen atoms naturally emit radiation, the most common element in the universe, humming quietly across every galaxy. Radio astronomers call it the hydrogen line, and by international agreement, it's protected. No commercial broadcast. No satellite. No cell tower is legally allowed to transmit there. Think of the entire radio spectrum as a highway packed with traffic. Television, radio stations, military radar, GPS, cell signals, all screaming over each other at once. Nations agreed to leave exactly one lane empty. Silent. On purpose. Not because it's useless. Because it's the only lane quiet enough to hear a whisper. This is why SETI scientists in the 1970s chose that exact frequency to search the sky. If any civilization out there understood physics the way we do, they'd know hydrogen sings at 1420 MHz everywhere in the universe. It's not an Earth convention. It's chemistry, the same in every galaxy. So if you wanted to be heard across the stars, and you knew we were listening, where would you shout? Right there. In the one lane we promised to keep silent.
We reached out to a SETI researcher who reviewed the Big Ear data years later, and the exchange stuck with us.
Natural sources don't pick their frequency. Hydrogen clouds, pulsars, background noise, none of them choose to sit precisely on a protected band.
So you're saying the frequency itself is the anomaly, not just the strength of the signal.
That's exactly what I'm saying. A natural fluke landing on the one channel every radio astronomer on the planet agreed to keep clean. That's not impossible. It's just very, very unlikely.
Here's the part that makes this personal. If astronomers hadn't agreed decades earlier to protect that one frequency, the WOW signal would have arrived at Big Ear buried under ordinary human noise. Radar. Radio chatter. It would have looked like static, and Jerry Emmon would have flipped past it without a second glance. That silence we built into the sky, for entirely selfish scientific reasons, may be the only reason we ever heard anything at all.
So the frequency isn't proof of anything. But it's not nothing either. It sits exactly where a natural fluke shouldn't, and exactly where a deliberate signal would. And there's one more detail buried in that printout. SETI researchers didn't flag it for decades. The shape of the signal's rise and fall matches exactly what you'd expect from something moving not randomly across the sky, but precisely with the rotation of the Earth itself. That rising and falling shape means one thing. Whatever produced it moved through Big Ear's field of view exactly the way a fixed point in deep space would, as Earth turned beneath it. Not a flicker. Not a glitch. A signal behaving like it was mounted to the sky itself.
So could it have been us? Ground-based interference, bouncing off the atmosphere.
Rule it out. Frequency's protected. No transmitter is supposed to touch it.
Then check the second horn. Big Ear ran 2 feed horns, scanning the sky seconds apart. A ground signal hits both at once. This one climbed in one horn, faded, then climbed in the other. That's not noise leaking in. That's something moving across the sky in sequence, exactly like a distant source would.
A satellite, then. Something in orbit, drifting past on the same frequency.
In 1977, nothing was licensed to broadcast at 1420 MHz. Not one satellite, American or Soviet, carried a transmitter on that band. It was reserved, by international agreement, for exactly one purpose: listening. Cross-check every catalog of objects overhead that August night, and the frequency comes back empty every single time.
Military testing, then. A classified transmission, leaked into deep space by accident.
That's the one people reach for last, because it feels safest. But the same treaty that protects 1420 MHz for astronomy bans militaries and broadcasters from using it in the first place. Any nation caught transmitting there would be violating the same international radio law everyone agreed to follow. No test on record explains it. No leak was ever traced.
So walk through it with me. Not the ground. Not a satellite. Not a weapon test.
Every explanation that doesn't involve something intelligent has been checked, and every one of them fails the same tests a real signal would need to pass. What's left isn't a conclusion. It's a blank space, exactly the shape a deliberate transmission would leave behind. I want to be precise here, because this is where people get it wrong. Nobody serious says the WOW signal was aliens. What serious researchers say is colder than that, and harder to sit with. After 45 years, science cannot say what it wasn't.
That's the uncomfortable answer. Not yes. Not no. Unknown.
Astronomers have pointed telescopes at that patch of sky in Sagittarius hundreds of times since 1977. Bigger dishes. Better receivers. Search programs running around the clock for months at a stretch. Nothing has ever come back. Not an echo, not a fragment, not a single repeat of those 6 characters Jerry Amon circled in red. So next time you're outside after dark, find a clear patch of sky and just look up for a minute. Somewhere up there, on one August night in 1977, something spoke for 72 seconds, in the one frequency we'd agreed to keep silent for exactly this reason. It hasn't spoken again. Whether that's because it can't, or because it's simply waiting, is the question every SETI program has been quietly chasing ever since.